The bigger issue is the lack of communication, right? Whoever that member is, the family member, friend, whatever the case may be, they need to hear the same conversation that I'm having with you so that they get it. They hear what I'm saying in true form. They have the opportunity to ask questions and be inquisitive and curious about why it's different now or why they should expect this or that, right? And then it's a fair playing game. I can address everybody at the same exact time and everybody hears the same thing. Now, how you perceive it and process it can be completely different, but at least it takes out the telephone option, right? Like you remember when we were in school and you had to say a secret code and it passed through the line and you hoped that the same code was there when it got to the last kid and it would be a completely different message. Hey friends, I'm here to break barriers by telling you I want to talk to your mom and your dad and your brother and your sister and your uncle and your aunt and your grandma and your grandpa and whoever is involved in helping you make big decisions like buying and selling real estate. If you remember a while back, there was a really funny meme going around, or there was a bunch of them about taking your dad to the home inspection and how it wasn't right for you to take your dad with you to a home inspection because they are just going to bicker back and forth with the home inspector, and dad thinks he's right even when he could be wrong and makes it a disaster. Okay. I think not. I think when you are going through a big process like this, it doesn't matter if you're 18, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80. Typically, there's somebody in the background that is helping you along the way to make solid decisions that you're either just bouncing things off of or kind of want their seal of approval. And I believe as a real estate agent that I need to know that. I need to know who that person is, and you need to introduce me to them. We need to have an open and honest conversation. And this will break down a couple of different ways, right? So I'm going to tell you a couple of different stories that come to mind when I think about this. And they range from buyers and sellers, from old to young. There's really no barrier. Single versus married, right? We all have people in our lives that we lean into and that we trust and look for guidance, and that's great. On my end of the spectrum, my job, a big part of my job is about expectation management, and I can do that really well if all involved parties are having this same conversation. So, I'm going to start with where this really goes bad first. So, when I tell you Mr. Buyer or Mrs. Seller, right? Whatever the case may be, which side you're on. I tell you something like, okay, in order to buy, these are the items that you're going to have cash up front. This is the range amount that you should anticipate, and this is how it's going to break down. This is when you're going to need it along the way. Okay? I give you that information. And then you go and talk to your mom and say, "Hey mom, this is what the, realtor's telling me that I've got to expect to have cash out of pocket before I ever get to closing." Well, mom bought a house 10 years ago when you could nickel and dime a couple things and you didn't have to do a lot of this up front. Or mom bought a house where the lender didn't make you pay for an appraisal up front. It was included in closing costs. And they had closing cost credits or whatever have you, and they never had to pay for it. So they go, "Oh my gosh, that's so wrong. You shouldn't have to pay for that. I didn't have to pay for that." Time out. Not the way that this needs to go, okay? Real estate is an ever changing world all the time on every side, okay? And just like anything else in the world, when you go through different vendors, there's different qualifications or processes that they follow. And this is really true with real estate, okay? Every real estate brokerage and every agent is going to have their own systems and processes that they follow, their own way that they work through their transactions, okay? Lenders, this is huge. Every lender is going to have a different way that they go through their criteria and check the box or what they require, right? Maybe they have different loan options. Maybe you are getting a special additional type of loan, like grant money, so to speak, or down payment assistance, whatever the case may be. Every loan option has different criteria and different things that have to be done along the way. This is not a one size fits all. So, whatever your past experience was or your family member's past experience was, may or may not be very similar to yours today. And we need to know that. But that's not the problem. That's neither here nor there. The bigger issue is the lack of communication, right? Whoever that member is, the family member, friend, whatever the case may be, they need to hear the same conversation that I'm having with you so that they get it. They hear what I'm saying in true form. They have the opportunity to ask questions and be inquisitive and curious about why it's different now or why they should expect this or that, right? And then it's a fair playing game. I can address everybody at the same exact time, and everybody hears the same thing. Now, how you perceive it and process it can be completely different, but at least it takes out the telephone option, right? Like, you remember when we were in school and you had to say a secret code and it passed through the line, and you hoped that the same code was there when it got to the last kid and it would be a completely different message. That's exactly what happens here when there are gaps between communication, meaning I'm removed from one party to the other, right? So I say bring it on. If you have somebody that is involved, then I want to know and I want to welcome them with open arms and be as involved in the process as you want them to be. So let's talk about a scenario. I'm going to start old first because I know you're thinking, oh, this is just some young person trying to buy their first house and they just don't know what they're doing and they got mama and dad doing everything for them. No, friends, no. So I had a situation where I was helping an 80-year-old lady sell a house. She had lived in this house. This was her one and only house. She'd been in it for over 30 years and she had never sold a house before. Nonetheless, probably didn't even remember buying the house, and it was vastly different from when she bought. So she had a brother-in-law in Colorado that helped her, and he was very involved. Matter of fact, I talked to him before I ever met with her. He called me and said, hey, we're getting ready to sell this house. I want you to meet, with us at the house and let us know what we need to do, and was kind of the guiding light. It had nothing to do with him. He wasn't on the title, right? The house was paid for, so he wasn't on a mortgage. It was her house and her deal, but he was helping her shift into an assisted living facility, and he was just her person to lean into and to trust and to help make sure everything happened. And she trusted that whatever he said was in her best interest and that he was going to protect her from getting taken advantage of, right? And as an older person, I can see how that could be very intimidating to say, I've lived all my life, for the most part as an adult in this one property, and now I have to shift and change, and this is all new. I've never done it before. I have to trust that somebody's actually going to take care of me, okay? So this is a perfect situation where it can go both ways, right? This person was older and it was a seller. A lot of times when I have family members involved, it's on the buying side, unless we're talking about like a probate, like a estate where someone has passed away and a family member is having to handle the property, okay? But this is what I'm saying. Everybody's live and well, and there's extra members involved. And it was great. The brother-in-law was fantastic and understanding. And you want to talk about some differences in the way things are done, right? He was in Colorado, which is a crazy market, extremely busy, higher price points. And we are in Sumter, South Carolina with this property, and it's like $100,000 property that would probably sell for, 300,000 or more in Colorado. So he really did a great job of being understanding and letting me show him all the documentation to show where we were at and why we were there and what needed to be done with the property. So this was like a really good, healthy relationship. He was involved from the beginning. We all worked together, and I still got a lot of one-on-one time with the actual seller while she was in her property, after she moved to her assisted living facility, all in between. It was really cool. So that was one really good example. Now I'm going to do a drastic left field example. I had a first-time home buyer couple. Okay, they're married. They're in their mid to late 20s, so they're not super young. They've had experiences in life and they've lived on their own for a while. They're moving from Washington State to Tennessee, and I'm helping them purchase a house in Tennessee. And they have an aunt that they're staying with who also lives in the Nashville area and has done a little bit of investing. She likes to buy properties and fix them up. That is not the ballgame we were in. These folks wanted a move-in ready property that they could handle as a first-time home buyer that was just ready to go and let them live their lives. They like to stay busy. They're into sports. They're into fitness. They just want to move in and live. Okay? So we are going through properties and we're going to go revisit a property that they're considering. And they say, hey, can my aunt come meet us at the property and tag along? And I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory on this. I was working with them when I was freshly postpartum. I just had my little boy, and he was with me everywhere we went for the most part because he was my little attachment at the time. This was in October. My sister had come down from New Jersey to visit with us and hang out with the kids for a few days. And my folks knew this. They knew that she was in town, but we were worried that this property was going to go under contract, and this is the time that they had available. So I met with them on a day that I said I wasn't available, that I had family in tow, and we were going to make it work and make like kind of a family trip out of it into Nashville. So that was fine. We get there, and it's a little bit chaotic in my world. My 3-year-old is not happy and not napping, and my baby is screaming in the car, and my sister is trying her best to help. My husband is trying his best to help, and sometimes the baby just needs mama. So, but I'm showing the house, and we come out and we're trying to talk about it and get everybody settled, and the aunt just lays into me about 21 questions. How many people live in the neighborhood? What are these stats? What are the stats? And it's all things that she would see through her lens from an investment standpoint. She's trying to see like what the margin would be, and have I done comps on the property yet to see where it should be priced at and all this type of stuff. And I'm simply telling her like, hey, we're not at that point yet, right? We're just looking, and they've been looking at a lot of properties, and this was the first one that they were even like generally considering. So if I sat down and did comps and comparables and figured out how many people were in a neighborhood every single time we were looking at a property, we would never see properties because I was showing them. I mean, this was probably the 15th to 20th house that they had seen. There's no way that that's obtainable. In this scenario, they just needed to enjoy the experience of looking and seeing and figuring out what they liked and what area they liked and hone in on that first. And then we dive into the nitty gritty. So I kind of just kept telling her the same answer, like, hey, if there's things I want to know, then I will happily do the research. This is not things that I would look up ahead of time. I'm not going to know how many properties are in this neighborhood when I'm going to go show the property. And on a whim, when I have family in town, it's my day off with my newborn that I should still be on maternity leave with. So my buyers 100% recognized that like Aunt was just very heavy-handed and saw things through a different lens, and they told me later that was the biggest mistake they'd ever made, and she would not come to another property with them, and wholeheartedly leaned into me and trusted me, which I love. And they are really on a stepping stone path. They got into a property and they know, this is like a 5-year property, and then they're going to go big, which I love. I love that for them, and they're working hard and making things happen. So that's kind of like the drastic where like you have somebody that's just trampling all over you and telling you, well, why don't you know this, or why don't you know that, or what about this, or what about that? And it's like, oh, hold the brakes, like one step at a time. Either way, at least I was face to face and I was able to handle her and say like, hey, this is what we'll do, this is how we'll handle it. It just was a little bit difficult because there was a lot going on at once, and it was not the time or place to be like having that conversation. It was simply like, I'm slipping you in, and let's open the door and let you guys see the property, and then we can talk about it later after I get settled and I get my children settled, because I was doing a favor, right? And to boot, my sister that was with me, she is also a real estate agent, and she's listening to this lady, and we get in the car and she's just like, Britt, you need to tell her to like kick rocks and get out of here. I cannot believe that she was asking you those questions. And I was like, well, everybody has their own perception, right? And as the saying goes, perception is reality for those people. So we worked past that and it was great. I love these folks and I'm still in touch with them today. So just because we have a situation with a family member does not mean that it deters my relationship with the client in any way, shape, or form. So let's talk about like kind of the in between. And this is what I'm used to having happen is I'm working with a client, usually buyers, like I said, most of the time first time home buyers, but not all the time. And they tell me, I've talked to my mom or my dad or my aunt. They used to be a realtor many years ago in this state, da da da. They know they're not quite up to snuff, but this is kind of their guidance, okay? And I'm gonna say like, hey, do you wanna put them on a call? Like, let's talk about this together. And I did this last summer with a new couple that were buying in Tennessee, and mom was on the call with us, and we answered questions and went through all of it. And before we got off the phone, I said, Mom, are you good? How are we feeling? And she giggled. She laughed that I asked her that. And I was like, look, you're a part of this process too. If you're here and you're on this phone call, then you are just as important and you need to be comfortable and feel good about what we're doing. And that was the last that I heard out of her. And it was just that she needed the assurity that her baby boy's being taken care of, right? Both of her kids. And I love that I have the opportunity to give that. And most recently, I have a very young couple that are not married yet that I'm working with. And he's 24 years old and pre-approved to buy a house. It's pretty awesome. This kid has done a good job getting his ducks in a row and working hard and keeping his nose down and grinding it out and getting ready to be able to move out and purchase a home, which is really cool. So I am so excited to be able to help them and get them started on a huge journey for generational wealth. Starting this young and being able to make decisions with real estate is amazing. So I got a phone call like the week after I met them, and I was on the way, I was finishing up a showing, so I called the number back. And I recognized the last name, and I thought, well, maybe it's him, maybe it's my client. And, because sometimes caller IDs are underneath of different people's names. And it was not, it was mom. And she said, you met with my son, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit. And at first I was like, oh, okay. And I thought, all right, mama's a little bit worried, or, there's something I don't know about. And she started with, you are a godsend. The documentation and the information that you have given my kids so far has been amazing. They had talked to somebody else and kind of got left in the wind, and you are so organized and gave them all of the information up front. And I love that everything you said reinforced things that I have already talked to them about. Ding, ding, ding. How amazing. But what she also wanted to make sure that I understood is that she was seeing some of the houses that were coming up in the search that we had started, and some of them were not in an area that they felt advantageous about. Mom believes that they really need to be out of a specific county area because that she lives in that county, they all live in that county, and the taxes are high, and she wants them to be in an affordable living situation. And the way that we had the search set up was a mile criteria from a job site. So it was including everything within that range. And I told her, she was worried the kids didn't tell me, hey, this is what we need to be looking for. And they had. And so I reassured her that they were really good at communicating with me, that they did a great job, and that we would narrow down the search a lot more once we started seeing a few properties. And she let me know that she intended on being there for showings when she could be, that she was going to be out of town the first weekend that we were looking, but any opportunity she could be involved, she would. And I said, that's great. You just let me know if there's anything that you need from me. I'm here, and we talked for 30 minutes. And it was a great conversation. And I wanted her to understand that I'm going to walk them through the process. And when we get into properties, we're going to talk about pluses and minuses. What type of financing could this property go for? And have a lot more in-depth conversations, which make you hear her in a little bit further down the road on things that she could be helpful with. So I'm here to just say it is not all bad. I really appreciate when my clients have support. How amazing if we all looked at it that way. How amazing that these folks are making a huge decision and they have support. They have somebody behind them saying, hey, I'm here and I want to make sure that you're okay. That's amazing. And if we as realtors would look through that lens and welcome that, we could do so much good. Now, it's not always pleasant, right? And sometimes we have to prove ourselves a little bit and show that we are the expert and we do understand what's going on in today's market and we are going to guide them and take care of them appropriately. Or sometimes it simply becomes a thing where the buyer or the seller realizes that they don't need as much involvement from a family member, and that's up to them to guide that for me, right? I'm happy to be as involved or not involved with whomever they deem necessary. At the end of the day, you are my client and I have a duty to you, right? But I say that to say, to other realtors, invite them in. To clients, create your boundaries and be okay with that. If you want someone involved, make that standard known up front. If you specifically want somebody not to be involved, make that standard known up front. We are here to protect you and your interest in this deal. And I've had that as well. I recently have had an estate sale where we were selling a property and there were some family members that were a little bit not so kind about the process. And there was one family member in particular that was kind of holding the weight. And she was very clear with me up front. And I said, look, I need you to do me a favor. I need a list of anybody you're concerned about and why or how they might contact me. And I had that list, and so did my brokerage, my admin, and my broker. So that way, if they called either one of us, we all had an understanding of the scenario and knew, hey, pause, red flag, you need to call Brittany and redirect back to her, right? So that nobody said anything or got involved where they shouldn't or couldn't, okay? So I am here to protect you in any way, shape, or form, for the good or the bad, and that's okay. So I want you to know that if you want mom, dad, uncle, auntie, brother, sister to be involved, then let them join in. It's a really cool process, and the fact that you have support is simply amazing. So when you are ready to buy or sell a house and you know that you've got some extra help along the way, then pick up the phone and call me. I am happy to help with everybody else included as well.